Hey, internet friends, it's Wednesday. You know what that means. And actually, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, it's really not Wednesday. I normally record these the same day I put them out. But this week, because I'm going to be at an all day speaking event, I'm actually going to be recording this on a Tuesday, but don't tell anybody. So, reason for today's video, I want to talk about something or maybe rant a little bit about something I've been seeing a lot on LinkedIn and just on social media in general when it comes to business groups and things like that. And I saw a couple different posts this week that I thought were really tone deaf when it comes to leadership. And it's one of those things where it makes leaders feel good to have some little bite-sized snippet phrase that justifies everything they do, but it doesn't actually help build any kind of a relationship with your team or move you forward. Okay. And the first one I want to talk about, because there was two posts by someone who is a very popular coach in the leadership space, global name and whatnot. And there were two posts in the last week that really frosted me. Okay. The first one said, "We all have the same 24 hours in the day." Okay. Well, technically, from a physics standpoint and timeline standpoint, yes, 24 hours in a day. The second post said that nobody's too busy, it's a matter of priorities. And again, I understand the spirit with which both of those are said, but in reality, those two statements are so tone deaf when it comes to leadership that it boggles my mind. I'm actually rather appalled that this individual posted these things. That's the kind of thing I would expect to see from a brand new coach that's still learning where they fit in the industry. That's not something I would expect to see from somebody who's got a global name and, 20, 30, 40 years of experience. So, why do I think that? Well, let's talk about that. The minute you say that everybody has the same 24 hours in the day, you are completely dismissing where everybody is from a opportunity standpoint, an ability standpoint, a resource standpoint, and frankly, pretty much anything else you want to talk about. I could come up with a whole bunch of things. I'm trying not to go too far here, but let's use an example because I've had leaders say this before, and it really just annoyed me. So, if you were in a leadership role, and I'll give you an example of somebody that I worked with who it was a husband and wife team that owned the firm. And they used to say, everybody has the same 24 hours in the day. It's not my problem if the staff can't get things done, outside of work, personal stuff. And that is simply not true because the owners of this firm had their kids working for them. So whenever they needed something done, they had built in personal assistants. One of their adult children was on average in the office about an hour and a half to 2.5 hours a day. The rest of the time they were out running errands for mom and dad or meeting contractors for them, things like that. Well, surprise, surprise, the person working for them that was making $30,000 a year couldn't afford to have a personal assistant and didn't have adult children because they were younger and earlier in their career. So immediately, it's not the same 24 hours in the day. The same 24 hours in the day also assumes everybody has the same priorities and goals. So what I'm getting at is if you're a leader and you're seeing that from somebody who's a expert, and I use that term lightly, that should be an immediate red flag. They're pretty out of touch with the realities of the working in the world that we live in. Okay. Because they're very narrow minded and they're doing what's called catchphrase coaching. Any of you who have talked to me at all know that the one thing that annoys me beyond all else is catchphrase coaching because it just makes these blanket assumptions. Now let's also talk about the other post that annoyed me. Nobody's too busy, it's just a matter of priorities. Well, again, that all depends on where you are in life. Let's go back to junior high school psychology. We all learned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Food, shelter, safety, and going all the way up to self-fulfillment. I hate to tell you this, but if you're in a leadership role, I'm going to assume that you're probably making more money than somebody in an entry-level role. You are also probably on a different spot in that hierarchy of needs. So when I hear people use that as an excuse for younger or lower level staff not advancing their career, not getting certain certificates and degrees and education and or making certain steps, it's really appalling that anybody is in a leadership role and is that out of touch with reality. Not everyone has the same resources, not everyone has the same priorities. If someone is struggling and working 2 or 3 jobs to be able to pay for the most basic living accommodations so that they have a safe space to live and to feed themselves and the ones that they love, it's not a matter of priorities as to whether or not they can take courses or go back to school and things like that. Okay. We love to think that there's resources out there for everybody, but let's be honest, that is not the world we live in. Not everybody qualifies for help with the things that they want or that they need for their career. So, what I really want everybody who's in a leadership role to take away from this is first and foremost, watch out for catchphrase coaching. Because when you use stuff like that, your staff is seeing, hearing, and feeling all these things I'm saying, and they are just widening that leadership gap. They look at you as being out of touch with reality, like you don't care, and you're going to use platitudes to excuse your own bad behavior while expecting them to be perfect. The second thing I want you to take away from this is that if you find yourself saying those things, look, we've all done it, right? We've all said things we didn't want to say, but own it. If you want to go back to your staff and to have any level of respect with them as a leader, you need to be able to say, you know what? I said something the other day that I really didn't think through very well, and I realized it could have been taken in a bad way. And have that conversation with your staff. You don't need to beg for forgiveness. You don't need to bend over backwards and do anything, but you need to just acknowledge that you said something that you kind of would say differently if you could do it over again. What that does with your staff is it says, okay, my leader recognizes that they're human and they make mistakes. They recognize that I'm not in the exact same position they are. And it lets the staff know that you remember what it's like to not be a leader. Because let's be honest, most of us haven't been in leadership our entire career. There's some, but most of us have had to work for somebody else. The problem is a lot of leaders forget what that's like. So, how does that tie into everything that we always talk about in these Wednesday sessions, right? Well, it goes back to your values. If you want to be seen as a good leader with a good culture in your team, with staff that wants to stay and work for you and wants to do the best for your customers and your clients, this is how you do it. You have to own up when you make a mistake. And you have to avoid the people on social media that are just trying to make business leadership catchphrases, because it's not. So that's just a little something to think about. I'm sure there are plenty of other examples that all of you could come up with. And I invite you to go ahead, drop those in the comments, send me an email, smoke signals, whatever works. But let me know what other catchphrases you see in coaching that you'd like me to break down and, well, quite frankly, destroy if I can. Because nothing works 100% of the time. That's what we all need to remember. And catchphrase coaching just locks us in there and doesn't give us wiggle room. And it doesn't give us value. So let me know what you think. If you want to have a conversation about this, you guys know how to reach me. Best way to do it is just go to jpcoachingnow.com and you can reach me right from there, or go ahead and drop a comment on this video and I'll reach out to you then. Until then, I will see you all next Wednesday and have a very successful week.